In this video, we're going to talk about camera control options. To access the camera control options, click Camera Settings and Remote Shooting, and then click on the Capture window. The middle window represents the camera control settings. Double-click the section you wish to affect. First, let's talk about exposure modes. In manual exposure mode, you set both the shutter speed and the aperture independently, giving you complete control over exposure. In shutter priority mode, you set the shutter speed, and the camera automatically sets the aperture to obtain the correct exposure. Bulb mode works just like a cable release did on film cameras, and it allows you to manually control the length of the exposure. To open the shutter, press the shutter button once, and then press it again to close. In program mode, the shutter speed and the aperture will be set automatically. Aperture priority allows you to set the desired aperture, and the camera sets the shutter speed automatically to obtain the correct exposure. In the color temperature menu, you can set the appropriate white balance for the environment that you're in. If you're not sure which white balance to use, auto white balance is a great place to start. Otherwise, you can choose from daylight, shade, or cloudy for outdoor shooting. If your scene is indoors, you can choose between tungsten or fluorescent white balance. There's a white balance setting for flash use, and you can also select from previously saved custom white balances here. To affect the color temperature manually, first click the Kelvin temperature icon to access the color temperature indicator, where you can adjust it by 100-degree increments using the right or left arrows. ISO settings vary from camera to camera. I have mine set up with my 1D Mark IV, where I can choose between 100 and 12,800 ISO in third-stop increments. With auto selected, the ISO speed will be set automatically. Lower ISO speeds are for outdoors and most normal shooting conditions. If you need to shoot indoors or in other low-light situations, you can set your ISO to a higher speed. In this section, you can adjust your metering mode. Evaluative metering is a general-purpose metering mode suited for portraits and backlit subjects. The camera measures the light intensity in several points in the scene and then combines the results to find the settings for the best exposure. Partial metering is effective when the background is much brighter than the subject due to backlighting. The metering is weighted at the center, covering approximately 13.5% of the viewfinder area. Spot metering is for sampling a very specific, narrow area of the subject or scene. The metering is weighted at the center, covering approximately 3.8% of the viewfinder area. Spot metering is very accurate and is generally not influenced by other areas in the frame. It is commonly used to shoot very high contrast scenes. Center-weighted average metering is weighted at the center and then averaged for the entire scene. If your image has many subjects in the central part of the frame, very consistent results can be obtained. You can set the file format to RAW, JPEG, or both, and the image resolution right here. File saving options allow you to save the files to the computer or to both the computer and the camera simultaneously. Exposure compensation can increase or decrease the standard exposure set by the camera. You can set the exposure compensation up to 3 full stops in 1/3 stop increments. Exposure compensation can be set in the auto exposure shooting modes.